You know, I don't really know what would have been my first exposure to the Phantom. I certainly remember watching the 2040 cartoon when I was little, and then seeing the live-action movie they had in the 90s. But knowing my parents, I probably had seen some old strips or something of the purple-clad hero. By now, I have most definitely seen quite a bit of him. Even seen the old black and white serial. You see, the Phantom is sort of an odd case. I mean, it's like one of the oldest superheroes ever by now, and he's just kind of that guy that pops up once or twice a decade, making you go, oh, wow, you're still around. God, I'm old. But the 90s were the last real burst of popularity for the character, I'd say. I mean, you may not have followed him or nothing, but if you grew up in the 90s, you certainly knew he was a thing, even if you'd forgotten about him by now. But being that I watched the show, and because it looked cool when you looked at the back of the box, we would frequently rent and eventually buy Phantom 2040, the video game, for the Sega Genesis. Back then, I didn't really know that there were differences between video games that were made for both the Sega and Nintendo, but we'll get back to that in a bit. From my understanding, though, the PAL version of the game is complete crap when it comes to the plot, using just a bunch of text in place of actual cutscenes. But for the story itself, we have Kit Walker, the latest in the line of father-to-son inheritors to the Phantom title, taking on the guise of the supposedly undying ghost who walks. He must contend with the complications of the year 2040 as forces such as the Madison Empire's BIOP production secretly experimented on mutants in labs beneath the streets, and Sean One's free orbital movement all threaten to tear the futuristic city of Metropia to pieces. Straight from the get-go, the game has you pumped. You get all the visuals of the villains, and then the awesome transforming into the Phantom intro after the lab of Kit's affiliate, Professor Archer, is set ablaze by biots that come to take his research on some plants from the Ghost Jungle. From start to finish, the game goes at a pretty breakneck pace for the adventure. What begins as an investigation into the whereabouts of the kidnapped doctor takes the Phantom all across the city's various, sometimes changing locations, and even possibly into outer space. I say possibly because this game is a bit diverse. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't gotten a fraction of the game's numerous endings, and I mean numerous. Yes, they all are variations in some way or another, but there are only a handful of truly accomplishing endings. The other 15 or so leave off with quite a bit of danger still left for the future to deal with. And these multiple endings all have to do with just how much can happen in the game itself. Occasionally, you will be presented with different people to talk to, and, depending on who you choose to talk to or what direction you decide to head, it will affect where you go in the story itself, opening up new areas and blocking off others. There have been times where I've never even been able to set foot inside the actual level of Biop Factory in some playthroughs, or fight the Triads, or a myriad of other scenarios. It's this kind of system that I was looking forward to so much when I found out Shadow the Hedgehog would offer so many different endings. But that's for another time. Exploration truly is the name of the game when it comes to Phantom 2040. I'm pretty certain I have never gone every single item in one playthrough. I don't think that's possible with how the game is designed, how it will lock off areas depending on what path you take. But it might be. I don't really keep track of that. Either way, you get enough stuff to deal with what you have to deal with. But there are also times where the game will pull something like you having to go back into an area right after you beat it in order to obtain an item, or else you'll never be able to get it again. And there are so many damn collectibles. There are things behind walls just out of reach that will have you cursing up and down trying to figure out how to get it. For the longest time, I could never figure out how to get a single damn wrist computer looking thing. And then when I finally did, I didn't even know what it did since we didn't have the instruction book. Just so you know, they increase how powerful your weapons are. When it comes to weapons, you have your standard blaster, fists, and a swinging rope, and a plethora of other firearms that you collect over the course of the adventure. But that's not all. With a bit of creativity, you can use the combinations of items you select to combine into more types of items. Have that boomerang, but want to do more than just one throw? Well then equip the spread gun with it and watch the curved weapons fly. Unfortunately, in the standard Sega version, you can only fire in a limited amount of directions. But with the Super Nintendo, due to its extra buttons, not only is the rope assigned to a button, automatically freeing up room for another weapon to be selected, but there is a button that allows you to stand in place and fire in all directions, including straight down. Though, I have heard this also might be the case for the 6-button Sega controller. I've never had one. For progressing through the levels themselves, you'll have doors all over the stages that can only be opened by destroying the computer terminals with the same numbers as the doors on them. For the more secretive rewards, however, there are usually slightly different looking walls that can be destroyed in the levels, which are barely able to be recognized sometimes, that will usually lead you to more valuable items. Sometimes the levels will even interconnect with others, a feature that I experienced for the first time ever in this game, and that I wouldn't really see again until Banjo-Tooie. It really made you feel like you were traveling around a massive world, as opposed to just normal video game levels. But a feature that really makes the world itself pop is the visuals. My god, this thing looks like a literal comic book come to life. Now, I enjoyed the cartoon of 2040, but I gotta say, it doesn't look that great when compared to the game. Don't get me wrong, I liked the wonky art and how it was different, but the figures in the game just look so much more appealing to me. The objects are more solid and look less like they'd collapse, and they're colored so much better. In the cartoon, everyone was pretty much chalk white. In the game, you get varying skin tones. This is some henchman schmuck in a robot suit. A clearly important one, but still a schmuck. This is graft. From the characters to the cityscapes, factories, imperial towers, and space stations, the colors and art just make the scenery pop out of the screen. For the music, however, well, it's got its really, really good hits, such as the opening music and the first chapter's theme. And then it's got its really not great tracks. Granted, part of the lesson's soundtrack comes from having grown up with the Sega Genesis version. while I do love that version and its music, even considering some tracks possibly better on it, there is no denying that the Super Nintendo version sounds more full and complete, and it does have better tracks itself quite often. But both versions have tracks I certainly raise an eyebrow at. While Sega has the more beta-sounding music sometimes, the Super Nintendo, in spite of its more extensive effort, really pulls some goofy shit at times. Like with the secret laboratory background. Like, seriously? What the hell is that shit? I mean, don't get me wrong, I like having seagull sound effects at the docks, but for some tracks... there's no excuse. Overall, however, once I played the Super Nintendo version, it really felt kinda like a special edition of the game I'd had since I was little. At first. When it's not cutscenes having more going on, the actual levels have more stuff in general. You actually see the Ghost Jungle plants floating in pods in the laboratory instead of just seeing it in a still image during a cutscene to give more of a reference. The docks actually have a translucent effect for water instead of there being nothing. I know the Super Nintendo made more use of the translucency effect than the Sega could manage to, but now I realize that it's an actual boat you take instead of just flying through the air. Visuals are slightly more blurred, giving a bit more of an organic feel. You get more of a presentation, with seeing parts that connect events together more seamlessly, actually seeing Tracker making a getaway in the industrial sector, or seeing the Phantom infiltrating the Prometheus rather than just appearing inside the cannon. The Super Nintendo itself just seemed to have more features being used in cutscenes, like cars rushing by, or a laser cage surrounding Archer. And certain enemy types only exist in the Super Nintendo version, with the ones used in the Sega one even having more animations occasionally. But that's not to say I like everything about the Super Nintendo one more. While you do get actual backgrounds during cutscenes in the Super Nintendo version, sometimes they're just missing things that the Sega version has, or give less of an impact than the Sega's black background would. Sometimes the Sega will have effects exclusive to it, such as the lights beaming into the sky from the city in the background when you're hopping across hover cars. And perhaps the most glaring visual difference, the backgrounds themselves. While the Super Nintendo does feel more organic a lot of times, it darkens things to the point where you can hardly even see what the background is. The pipes in the industrial sector, those look like pipes. But the billowing smoke in the background, would you even know it's there if I hadn't told you, or if I had just put the Sega version up right now? It works for areas like the Biot factory, making the machines in the background look more menacing, or making the foreground pop in the Prometheus cannon, but it really takes away from the sense of setting when everything's been drenched in darkness. Sure, the Sega version can test the eye at times with how contrasted some things look, but I view it as a small trade-off for usually getting the better dynamic when it comes to the lighting. A lot of times it felt to me like the Super Nintendo tried to be a bit too fancy. The continual color change when you get to different areas, like the blackened interior of the final maximum bits and the changing of the orbital platform from the suitable orangey-yellow to green, are clearly to show progression. But it works so much less than the Sega's more simple solution of keeping the visuals the same, and with it, keeping things more consistent. Maybe they were trying to be grander with the slower clouds during the launch sequence of the missile on the Super Nintendo. I don't know. But what I do know is that the clouds rushing by in the Sega version work so much better with a sense of urgency. And the noise that the spidery wall machine things make when they get hit in the Super Nintendo, you know, that sound that sounds like someone hitting a ping pong ball. Yeah, that one. That just feels so damn off to me, especially when every other enemy shares a different sound effect. Same goes for using that for Graph's walking. It just doesn't work when the dude's the size of a normal human. And then when you beat him, a box comes flying out with a new weapon to use. Granted, you get a new weapon in the Sega version upon victory, but it doesn't just come flying out the side of the screen after the fight. That crap just looks too goofy to me. On the topic of weapons, does anyone use pellets? Seriously, I mean, seriously. I get that they're supposed to be useful to drop down on enemies or blind them or some crap, but never have I made actual use of them in the playthroughs of my game. When you have crap like homing blasts and explosive blasts, who the hell is gonna waste any time on these little dinky items you can drop? Doesn't matter how powerful they are. As a weapon, they do jack shit. But the most disappointing weapon in the entire game? The fire retardant pellets. I'm sorry, but these are just a slap in the face. Yeah, you have to go out of your way to find them, but even then, it's just... who's gonna see a fire, stop to waste time going into the inventory, and then pop back out to use them on some small little fires? Yeah, it takes up hardly any energy to use, but it just ain't worth the effort. It's the equivalent of the fish food item from Jet Force Gemini. I guess you might use the pellets to drop down on those harvester bosses in No. I completely forgot about that. Chapter 3. Not that the pellets would even be all that useful, but... Chapter 3. The power goes out. You're trapped in the ghost jungle, and have to stop 3 different machines that are being sent to harvest crap from the jungle. And those harvesters? To hell with all the biots swarming you in the level. Those harvesters are complete bullshit. If you're not careful, those bosses can eat through your entire health bar in a second or two in the Genesis version. Have to dangle above them when they drop down to shoot at them, and then, on top of that, the bastards get faster each time you face one. That is why you make use of the live selection in the options menu and amp it up to 10 lives. If not, good fucking luck. Stock up on every damn life you can get, because you're gonna need it there. The biggest dick move, though? Sean 1's computer. He get up to the orbital platform, and you kick the space dude's ass before he can destroy the city with his cannon. But he still has the plans to possibly make the weapon again. So how do you prevent this little ending ruining conundrum? Well, simple. You go to this one hole of the level and drop through the floor that no other part of the level would allow you to drop through, so that you can swing over to a wall and break open a secret passage to Sean's secret hidden computer where the blueprints for the space cannon are being stored. No indications, no hints, no nothing. Thankfully, anyone playing this game is a psychic, so they know they can just drop through that shit and blast the computer up. Now, with all this complaining I've been doing, you might think that the game probably ain't that great. But it is. Trust me. It is certainly one to give a shot if nothing else, and the pros far outweigh the cons. Yeah, it'll kick your ass the further in you get, but I'll be hard-pressed to find many other examples of such well-done games for superhero characters. Once you master the way it plays, there's quite a bit of fun to be had with it. As for which version to pick up, well, that's the tough part. Each version has its ups and downs. Want the version that has clearer story flow and usually fuller musical prowess? Super Nintendo's the way to go. Want visuals that pop more and better consistency in the level coloring? Sega's got your back. Either way, the PAL version is a piece of shit. What begins as an investigation into the whereabouts of the kidnapper. What begins... What begins as an investigation...